What's going on, everybody? This is Cyrus Dale, author and autodidact. Just got done reading Trumbull Park by Frank London Brown. This was a hell of a novel. Now, it took me a while to get through this. This was 430 pages, plus the introduction. It was long, but it was a damn good book. Frank London Brown, he did a hell of a job. Now, this is a novel set in the 1950s in Chicago, on the south side of Chicago. And basically the main character, Buggy Martin, him, his wife, his two kids, they all are living on like 57th and State in Chicago. And basically this building, they call it the Gardner Building. The person who owns it, his name is Mr. Gardner. So they're in the Gardner Building, and the Gardner Building is falling apart. It's subpar conditions. If I remember correctly, it was kind of like a communal living situation. So basically Buggy and his family had to share the bathroom with other people that were in the building. It was one of those situations. Actually, I lived like that too back in the day. Not in a dorm, I was living in Hyde Park somewhere, but that's for another video. But anyway, this building is falling apart. A baby actually died from falling off of a porch in the Gardner Building. The baby's name was Baby Dog. And so him and his family, they want to get out. Him and his wife, they want to get out. And his wife fills out the application for the Chicago Housing Authority. She gets accepted to this project called Trumbull Park, which is further south and further east, 103rd and Bensley. So for my Chicago people, you know, that's like right off of Yates, over there by Torrance, that area, 103rd. And by the way, this was a autofiction. So for people who don't know, autofiction basically means it's fiction, but it's based on true events that the author went through. So it's not necessarily an autobiography, but it's an autofiction. So they move out to Trumbull Park. Now they've already heard like little inklings, little stories that Trumbull Park is racist, but they like, come on, let's go, we ain't scared. But they get out there and they get a run for their money. I think they're one of 5 black families that's in Trumbull Park. Everybody else is white. And they get out there, and I mean, these folks out there, they was racist. That's an understatement. Racist is an understatement. I mean, they setting bombs off to try to intimidate them. Buggy and his family, somebody actually came and dropped a snake through the little mail hole in the front door. They dropped a snake in there and basically put a snake in his house. They threw things at black families' windows. Of course, they called them the N-word umpteen times. It was just a real hectic situation. And they were all married. All of them had kids. Most of them were pregnant. Most of the women were pregnant, including Buggy's wife, Helen. There's this one couple out there, Arthur and Mona. Now, Arthur actually gets fed up with the mob and the harassment. He actually shoots at them. Now, he doesn't get arrested for this, but later on, he gets arrested for carrying a gun. They had a good lawyer from the NAACP. The lawyer got Arthur off. One key component about this book is that the things that were happening in the project, as far as the police patrolling, the police were patrolling the project in order to keep the blacks safe. That's what they claimed they were sent to do, but they were acting scared of the white folks, scared of the mob. You know what I'm saying? Like anytime the mob would get rowdy and start throwing stuff and start doing stuff, instead of dealing with the mob, they'd say, take cover, man, take cover. You know, like they were scared. Also, if you were black in this project, you had to sign a sheet. You had to sign in and out in order to leave, in order to go to somebody else's house. Only if you were black. And the black families in there, they like, why we got to do all this? We the ones that's getting messed with. Why we getting treated like we the criminals? So that's one thing they had to do. Another thing, if they wanted to get to like a far bus stop or get somewhere far, the police would take them by paddy wagon. Like for example, Buggy, he worked west off like Cicero. I think he made like plane engines or something like that. And so the paddy wagon would take him from Trumbull Park over to I think like 95th and Stony or 95th and State, one of them, so he could catch another bus. See, but eventually they evolved or devolved, depending on how you look at it, to squad cars. So the squad cars started transporting them around. Now how that happened is one of the wives of the black families, I can't remember which name, but one of the wives was pregnant. And so she took the paddy wagon to the hospital. Now en route to the hospital, she has the baby inside the paddy wagon. After that happens, all the blacks call a meeting. So they would always call meetings at whoever they would choose house, the black families, and Buggy was the leader of those meetings, by the way. And so they called a meeting after this happened. they decided that they were going to talk to the police and try to change the mode of transportation from paddy wagon to squad car, because they didn't like how they went down, having a baby in a paddy wagon. They wanted something more comfortable, because like I said, most of those wives were pregnant. But come to find out, as they leave the project, there's always mobs hanging around. As they left the project, they kind of were uncomfortable riding in those squad cars because it didn't provide as much protection as the paddy wagons. So they still stuck it out with the squad cars. They went through hell. They really did. The ending of the book is pretty much Buggy standing up to the mob. That's how the book ends. You know, after all the craziness that they go through, the book ends with Buggy pretty much single-handedly standing up to the mob, putting his fears aside, and just, I'll let you read it. I ain't gonna spoil nothing, but great book, Trumbull Park. Now I'm gonna get into some random stuff. So I'm pretty much done with my synopsis of the book. I'm just gonna get into some random thoughts for me. One thing about this book, me being from the Chicago area and living in Chicago actually for a couple of years, I'm somewhat familiar with the slang, and some of the slang that is used today and that has been being used for my 20 plus years of life was used in here. Let me give y'all some examples. For example, the word goofy, that was used a lot and that's still used to this day, goofy. Let me read a couple of goofy quotes. What I had told Helen about Negroes not sticking together was beginning to soften at the edges and melt away before the hot, happy, goofy kind of way things were happening. You said it, the association's got a big racket going out there, and not one of those 10 goofs know what mascara is pulling. Through all this, through all the hate I'd begun to feel for all white people, this goofy Pete and I had stayed friends. Now I'm gonna get into another part of the slang that is specific to that time period. For some reason, back in those times, men called each other daddy. You know, just like how, you know, nowadays people say, "What up, Joe?" "What up, Jack?" "What up, bro?" They called each other daddy back then. Let me read a couple daddy quotes. "You mean cops?" He laughed. "Daddy, I mean us colored folks." "I gotta go myself. These bastards might have put another snake in the door." The cop looked surprised. "A what?" "A snake, Daddy." "Hey, Kevin, wake up and live, Daddy." "Hey, Buggy, come on, let's eat." "What are you doing, daydreaming?" I laughed. "Cool it, Daddy." Another random thing about this book. So in Chicago, you know, like nowadays there's a CTA, and the CTA is mostly comprised of the bus and the L, the train. See, but back then they had the bus, the train, the L, he just called it the L. They also had streetcars. So I'm just curious of why they needed all three. Like, did one cover something that the other didn't cover? Because that's a lot. Because like I said, nowadays it's just the bus, the L, and that's it as far as, you know, like public transit. But back then they had the bus, the L, and the streetcar. So my guess is that the streetcar probably covered down for other stuff that the L or the bus didn't cover. Also back then, what was interesting about transportation is nowadays we got 290. And in this book, he speaks of 290. It wasn't called 290 back then, but he said they were building the Congress Expressway, which is now known as 290. Also, he talks about the IC train. He says the IC train took people from the suburbs to the loop to work. Now that IC train is now a metro line. So I guess they didn't have metro back then, but they had the IC train that only went out to the south suburbs. That's all I got for my random thoughts from this book. This was a great book, Trumbull Park. I'm gonna put the link to this book below. This version is the Northeastern University Press. They got like a special, here, the Northeastern Library of Black Literature. They got like their own selection of like Black lit. So this is the version I have. I'm gonna put the link down to it here. And also, don't forget, check out my book, Live from Heaven. I'm gonna put that link too. Again, my name is Cyrus Dale. Thank you for watching this video in its entirety. God bless.